Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. It has been often said that the church is the backbone and the heartbeat of the community. But what role might the faith community play when it comes to addressing crime and violence in the community? Well, tonight on Take Back Our Community Thursday, we're talking to faith leaders who are rolling up their sleeves to provide help and guidance. My guests are Reverend Renata Eustace, pastor of Christ Lutheran Church and a member of the Ward for Faith Leaders Against Gun Violence, and Minister Francis Smith, pastor for External Relations at People's Congregational United Church of Christ, also a member of Ward for Faith Leaders Against Gun Violence. Of course, both of these congregations are in the District of Columbia. Thank you both for joining the conversation. I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your thoughts and your activities.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Mr. Fisher.
Absolutely. So let me just start off. What do you believe the role of the church should be when it comes to addressing some of the social ills of our community, particularly some of the most critical ones, such as crime and violence? Reverend Eustace, we can start with you.
Well, I think the most traditional role has been to comfort the families and friends of people who have been affected, whether it be a funeral, a memorial, or some kind of counseling afterwards. But I think we have expanded that beyond that traditional role and see ourselves as really needing to respond to the fear that's in the community at large. That I have seen how those circles of people affected by violence, particularly by a shooting, are wide and a lot wider than I really understood before. And it extends to the people who maybe didn't even know the person who was killed, but it happened in their neighborhood. And there's a climate of fear, and people are turning inward and just like isolating themselves in their houses. And when really what is needed is to come outward and to support each other and to develop stronger relationships. And we're playing a role in that. And then I also think that hope is a huge thing that the faith community has to offer. I had an experience once with being led by a church member who had someone he'd known in high school, had just been released from prison, and he was now on the streets. And he had me to come and meet with this man because he felt like he needed some hope. And part of our conversation was about, why this risky and dangerous behavior that puts you in incarceration. And what was said to me was, most of us don't think we're going to live past 25. So why plan for the future? Why, why obey the law and avoid that kind of thing? And so I think that part of what we have to offer is meaning in the present, and feeling that there is some kind of power that's not tied to violence, that there's another kind of power you can have. Another thing I feel like we offer is just the valuing of life. And, we were very involved. We were one of the main organizers of the Black Lives Matter vigils that happened on 16th Street. And we had a sign that said, "Black Lives Matter to God and to us." And I think that's something that we offer, to know your life is important to the creator of everything. And that's embodied in the people that are around you. I think that is life-changing. And we have specific activities in the community that are vehicles, I think, for that comfort and hope and addressing the fear. And more generally, I would say we're trying to counter this culture of death with a culture of life.
Same question for you, Minister Smith. And while Reverend Eustace was talking, you were nodding your head in agreement. Your thoughts about what she was sharing?
Well, I think that the Black church particularly has always been a place of refuge and a resource to the community. We've provided assistance, we provided spiritual underpinning. We have been a place, a safe place, a safe space where people can come and find relief from whatever it is that's they're facing in the community. I think today our job is to go out, is more evangelistic, is to go out and be a part of the community. As Pastor Eustace just said, there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of feeling of alienation. And we are, in our efforts, letting people know that they can do something. They can turn to God. They can pray. There's hope. That there's another avenue to address their problems rather than picking up a gun and going and shoot someone. And think we have to break the cycle of violence. You know, you make me angry, or you enter my territory for drug purchasing, drug sales, or you're in my gang, you're in this gang, and I'm in my gang, and you crossed over my line. And sometimes you just you have to say, wait a minute, stop. You are taking a life here, and when you take a life, that affects two families. That affects the family of the victim, and that affects the family of the perpetrator. And there's hurt all around, and we have to stop that. And I think that we have to break that cycle that keeps turning. And so we really want to interject ourselves into that process, so that people will learn that violence will only beget more violence, and that even if you're angry, that taking another life really won't resolve your anger.
Let me ask this, Reverend Eustace, when you kind of suggested, the church has always kind of been a refuge for people to come to. But when we're looking at some of the issues that are affecting the communities now, was there kind of a seminal moment, was there a watershed moment, I should say, where in your congregation, where you had to say, let's stop waiting for them to come to us and we must now go to them? Or was there an evolution or an evolving of how that kind of, for lack of a better term, street ministry came to pass?
I think we've always had kind of an outward facing things, but more in the area of sort of social ministry in terms of providing services, and not so much in, I would say, more the building of relationships and the change, the one-on-one kind of changing of lives. And I think one of the silver linings of the whole COVID experience was it got us out, like we weren't doing things inside the building, and the kind of ministry we could do was outside. And then I think the other for us as the I was speaking as Christ Lutheran then, but I think for us as the Ward 4 faith leaders, the seminal moment was there were a series of killings in our ward very close to us at the beginning of last year. I think I'm remembering it right. And our council member, Janice Lewis George, called on the faith leaders. So, I mean, she's a person of faith. I believe she's a member of Minister Smith's church.
Yes.
And she called on us to step forward, and it was kind of an all hands on deck. I
think I remember she had a press conference.
Yes.
It was a mid-afternoon press conference from what I remember. And there were a lot of people. She was very, very emotional during this because, as you suggested, there was a rash of shootings in Ward 4. It was from our perspective, it was big news. And so, yes, I do remember that. But please go ahead.
Yeah, and so I think the leadership of Reverend Patty Fears and also Reverend Graylin Hagler, they came up with what to me seemed like an incredibly ambitious idea, which was to have a 72-hour ceaseless prayer vigil.
Yes, yes.
And so we did that, and we were praying inside the buildings, at times when, the middle of the night when you didn't want to be outside. But then we also did a lot of things outside. We did some prayer walks. There was actually a safe passage worker that was killed outside of Coolidge during that time. And we gathered there on the corner and tried to be a place where students could come in and pray with us. And a few did. And Mr. Smith could also speak to this because it's been one of his main areas of work has been these community vigils. But we've made an effort just to, I think we've seen that there's a place for us, and that it's going to the places that are hurting and going to the places of death and reclaiming them as holy ground.
Speaking of finding a place, talk to me about the upcoming camp piece, a free camp for youth. What is that, and how can people participate?
Okay. Yes, there is a peace camp that we are having for youth that are ages 9 to 13, and it's going to be the first full 3 weeks of August, so leading right up until school would start. So it's August 5th through 23rd. Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4. And the focus is really on trying to get at the root of some of what is making for the violence that we're having, building up self-esteem, helping young people learn while they're still open to learning, and it's easier to learn. How to do some creative, collaborative problem solving, to think critically, to think about the future. We're going to have physical literacy. We're going to have some art stuff. We're going to have some interesting trips. I think we're even going to the White House, and then we're doing some things outside, urban adventure activities. We also have for the older group, we're going to break the groups into probably the 9, 10, 11-year-olds and then the 12 and 13-year-olds. And the older group, we're working with our council member, and she is going to present us with 3 problems that are real problems in the community, 3 issues. And they are going to work together to figure out how would they propose something to resolve it.
So that's fascinating, and I do want to drill down a little bit more. But before the break, I want to find out how people can participate. Is there a website? Is there a phone number that you can share with me real quick? Because this will also be posted on our website after 7 o'clock tonight.
Yes, it's Peace Camp at Ward 4. What's the website, Francis?
Ward4faithleaders.com.
Okay.
Let's say that again. You said it's Peace Camp
at Ward 4, and the 4 is the number, faithleaders.com.
That's our email address.
Okay, Peace Camp at Ward 4
faithleaders.com.
.com or .org? It's .com.
Yeah.
Peace Camp at Ward 4, the number 4, faithleaders.com. We're going to talk about this more on the other side. And as I said, for those who are interested in participating in the Peace Camp from August 5th to 23rd, we will make sure that information is posted on our website. Going to take a quick break, but when we come back, more of this conversation on Take Back Our Community Thursday. The original Quiet Storm with John Mons is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. We'll be back in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our Take Back Our Community Thursday conversation with faith leaders who are trying to address critical issues in our community, specifically crime and violence, gun violence and the like. My guests are Minister Francis Smith. He is the pastor for external relations at People's Congregational United Church of Christ, also a member of Ward for Faith Leaders Against Gun Violence, also Reverend Renata Eustace, pastor of Christ Lutheran Church, and also a member of the Ward for Faith Leaders Against Gun Violence. I want to continue the conversation that we were having right before the break when we were talking about the peace camp that is coming up next month on starting on August 5th. You mentioned, Reverend Eustace, about some of the older young people who will be participating, and this is free. It's free. It's free. It's free. And working with the council member about some problem solving. Why is that important? And I'd like to hear also from Minister Smith on that.
Well, I think it's important because it is with young people that the greatest problem seems to present itself. You know, when we not long ago, a 14-year-old was shot dead trying to carjack. So it appears that older perpetrators are convincing younger children to become involved in their activities. I think probably because they understand that they aren't facing the same kinds of repercussions in terms of the criminal law that older perpetrators might have. And so they're convincing young people to take this route. And we have to stop that. You know, we have to turn young people around. And unfortunately, sometimes in schools, young people, particularly boys, find themselves in difficult circumstances. They find themselves to be suspended or even expelled. And then they become involved in activities that are morally and dysfunctional. And we have to begin to turn that around and engage them in activities that are more constructive, and to help them develop skills that they can utilize both in school and in their future lives.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm really curious about from your perspectives is not everyone, obviously, is a person of faith. And so how do you bridge the gap between the needs of a community in crisis with people who are not of faith, or your faith even, and the kind of work that you're trying to do, particularly when we are talking about, as you just suggested, Minister Smith, particularly when we're talking about young Black men. They're, I'm sure you've heard, I ain't trying to hear that, but at the same time, while they may not be trying to hear it, but obviously in order to hear them say that, you are already engaged in some kind of conversation with. So how does that work?
Should I respond?
Yeah. Either way, yeah. Okay. Yeah, come right. Look, don't be afraid to bring them into the church for the sermon.
Yeah. Well, for the peace camp, it explicitly does not have religious content.
Yeah.
We are obviously, they know it's sponsored by churches, but we are we're building on the values that we hold as people of faith, but we're not teaching religious content. I mean, I don't think if someone asked us about it, we would talk about it, but it's not something we're planning as part of the content. I think that sort of, I guess I feel the starting point is always love, and that I've never met anyone that didn't need love. And our church mission statement is deepen relationships with God and our neighbors. So I think that most people encounter God primarily through other people, and whether they're going to name it as God or not, I think that we all need what God is giving to us through each other, which is that love and that sense of worth.
Mm-hmm.
And life skills are life skills. Whether you're a person of faith or you're not. My son-in-law happens to not believe at all, and he's the most moral man that I know. So that you can engage people in conversation and in relationships, and that's the essential element. I think we know what's right and what's wrong really doesn't necessarily depend upon your faith tradition. And we have a lot of faith. We have a lot of different denominations involved here. So we don't specifically refer to God one way or another. But we engage you in conversation, whether you believe or not believe. And we don't ask who you are and what you believe when we encounter you. When we engage young people on our peace walks, actually, we do tend to find out people really do want to pray. They want to do something. They want to try to change the environment in which they find themselves. But again, it's life skills you can use anywhere. And that's what we try to promote. We try to promote a healthy culture so that people will begin to relate to each other as human beings. And it's great if you find God, our doors are open. But more importantly, we want you to live a life that's meaningful.
Yeah. What is the Ward for Faith Leaders Against Gun Violence? How did this organization start? What was, if I may, the genesis of this group?
Well, I think Pastor Eustace mentioned it in the beginning. After the 72-hour prayer vigil, we just started to meet on Tuesday mornings at 9. And then we had a prayer walk around Roosevelt High School. And then we decided to walk down Kennedy Street from North Capitol all the way to Georgia Avenue. And then we walked around Coolidge High School. And we found that engaging in these activities, we also have had prayer vigils at locations where individuals have been the victims of gun violence. And what we've encountered in these is that the community comes out. People come outside of their houses and they have a chance to express themselves. And in one we had at Coolidge not long ago for a young person, a junior high school student who was also the victim of gun violence elsewhere, but was a student at that area. The father came out, and that really kind of affected me because he was so full of anger, But I found myself hugging a man who I had never met before, but he just needed a hug. He needed a place where he could express himself. And that's what we try to provide, an opportunity for you to get your grief out and to find that there are other people who care. In fact, we're holding a peace vigil on Saturday at 6:00 at 8th and Underwood for a young man who was killed, gunned down. He was actually a resident of Virginia. Kaan Demir is his name. But he was shot at Underwood, 8th and Underwood Streets. And we're holding a prayer vigil to honor him, to remember him, because we want to make people understand that the decedent in these cases was a person. And we think that if you begin to feel the grief, you begin to feel what it means to take a life, then you'll be more reluctant to do so.
Reverend Eustace, do you believe that your efforts are working, that they are making a difference? And if so, how do you know?
Certainly, a lot of it's done on faith, but I think one of the things that demonstrated to me that it was making a difference was there was a shooting pretty near our church on Buchanan and 15th, and the neighbors were really very up in arms, so to speak, and really just I mean, it's not a neighborhood that typically has experienced a lot of that, and a lot of blaming being cast at the police, at the city government, and many different things. And so we called for this prayer vigil, and there were a lot of neighbors that came out, and people who hadn't really encountered each other before. And we opened up a space for prayer. And I think I led with something about, our tendency when we're so afraid is to turn inward. And what we really need to do is turn outward and connect with each other. And then there were people there who were praying for the victims, but then people who were even praying for the shooter and for their family. And so, and then the neighbors started to talk to each other, and they started to almost confess, like I'm guilty. I've been here 20 years, and I keep my head down, and I, just go out to work and to school, and I just come back and I don't engage. And, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to start to get to know you. And, so I think that idea of connecting people with each other and thinking about how you can become more human instead of just building up the walls, that confirmed for me that we had like a special place that isn't being filled by the many other people that are trying to do good things in our community and our city. So yeah, I think that would be an illustration of something that was working for that I've seen.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Minister Smith?
Well, you're having us, aren't you?
I beg your pardon?
You are having us on today, aren't you?
Well, and so let me say that our Take Back Our Community Thursday conversation, which we do almost every single Thursday, we're having you on, and we've had others because we decided that there were too many issues in the community, big and small, not all of them having to do with crime and violence, but still having to deal with addressing social ills and reaching out to the Minister Smiths and Reverend Eustaces and even people who are not in the faith community, people who are trying to change things one street at a time, one person at a time, one parent at a time, one business at a time. And so yes, we would not have you two on unless we believed that your efforts were worthwhile. But the conversation from you is because the genesis from your communities has been with you, that there are things that you may experience, anecdotes and other kinds of things that we don't know. And so yes, so certainly that is why, as you said, we have you on, because you are the people with the boots on the ground.
And that makes us feel like we're making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I was walking around Underwood Street this morning, handing out flyers for our peace vigil on Saturday, and I got to talk to two men who were talking on the street, and they were just saying how we really wanted to do something. We wanted to have an event of some sort to address how we feel. And, I think one of the challenges, particularly the police, but also others in the community have, is that when you face a number of these events, particularly like homicide or like these carjackings, eventually you become numb.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes rote to you, and we can't allow that to happen.
Mhm.
Particularly with shootings, but just in the crime in general, if we just can't allow it to become just what we put up with from day to day, because then people become alienated, people become hardened, and they do resort to violence in order to address whatever is going on in their community. And what we want to make sure that people stay conscious and stay aware and stay engaged, just to address these problems so that they don't become numb, they don't become matter of fact, they don't become something that we learn to live with, because moral dysfunction is not something that you should learn to live with. You should strive every day to reduce it as much as possible.
Often we hear in the town square that churches aren't doing enough or anything. And we know that is not true, obviously. But, Reverend Eustace, do you believe that the faith community needs better public relations? And is public relations important beyond the actual work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the strongest voice is your actions, right? But you're saying that people need to know about the actions too,
Yeah.
beyond the kind of inner circle of people who are affected. And I mean, I think that's true. We've had some segments on the news, and then there's a few people that see and hear that. I also think we're very committed to the places where we are, and setting an example for people that we can't. The problems are big, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean you can't do something, and you can't do something where you are. And you can't make the neighborhood where you live and the ward where you are just a little more human and a little more caring and a little more full of life. And that just because you can't do it all, it doesn't mean you can't do something. And you also know, where you live more than the other, the places that are a little further away. And I think creating empathy wherever it is, and caring for others, it just extends in like widening circles. And I think my experience is that I don't always know what the effect is, or I don't know until much later, because there are these ripple effects. I think just like fear and violence has a ripple effect, I think that peace and love and goodwill and caring about people when they need it also has a ripple effect. So yeah, I think that I don't think I'm not personally going to be investing in the public relations part of it, but
Other than this conversation.
the people will talk about it. I think that's great. I mean, one of the things is that we are hoping to get more campers, and I've noticed it in my own life for and I'm talking about the Peace Camp now, that people are so reluctant to sign up. We're so last minute now. I don't know if that's also an effect of COVID. But one of the hopes that I have is that we may have groups from particular schools. So there's more than one person that's coming to the camp from a school, and they could be supportive of each other in their day-to-day school life, of remembering the experience and the things that they've learned in the Peace Camp, and having a deeper relationship that's based on some real sharing and experience together. So yeah, so I guess like in the publicity realm, I would love to get people, as Minister Smith suggested, to come to the vigil and also to participate in the camp. I think we're also, if there are people who would like to contribute to the camp, either as volunteers or as giving donations, that would also be a way that you could reach out to us and let us know that.
Yeah. You said something, Minister Smith, that struck me. You said that you saw these two guys who were talking on the street, and they were talking about doing something, but obviously needed guidance, leadership, direction to make improvements. Have you found that challenging people in the community has helped, because it's one thing to complain, it's another thing to be a person of action, even if you need direction or leadership.
Well, that's hard to measure.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we get a response from the public officials. I sent a notice to the police officer who deals with families, because we like to engage the victim's family in whatever vigil, just to make sure that they're okay with it, and if they want to participate, like some have in the past. And I don't know, what they tell me is that we're grateful for what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's that is getting the word out, and I think that is engaging people, and I think they appreciate it. So yes, I feel it's having a positive effect. I know that we get a positive response from everybody we contact, and everybody says, they're thankful that we are out here doing this. But whether, all I can say is, homicides are down, but it's summertime. And so there is a bump, in activities, because school is out and it's hot. And so people are engaging in activities that we would rather they were doing something more constructive. But I think that it is making a difference. I know it's bringing us closer together. I know it's enlivening our congregations. I know members of my congregation are feeling the need to get out. We have a long history of having been involved in social action. We were very involved in the civil rights movement. And then we have been very active in LGBTQ communities. And we've always helped with food insufficiency. We've always had a food pantry. So I think that people do come to us when they feel the need. But I think what's the difficulty is we're kind of slow getting into the cyber tech age. I think that COVID has made us more aggressive and more knowledgeable in that area. But we still have a long ways to go. We still, a lot of churches use Facebook more effectively. I know the mega churches do, and I think we're just learning how to do that, how to become more media savvy. But I think one of the things that bothers me is a lot of young people say, "Well, there's nothing for us to do." But I know that difference from when I was a child, there was only like 3 or 4 things you could do. Today, there's a lot of organizations that are trying to provide activities to engage young people, but they all seem not to have too many people signing up. So I think that I think we have to keep consciousness going, and that's why awareness is important, so that people know these activities are out there, that there are other alternatives to the less desirable activities that young people can engage in.
Well, we're going to do our part, obviously, not through just this conversation, but as I mentioned, I'm going to be posting that information on our website, and it'll be there after 7 o'clock of this evening. But certainly other avenues within the WHUR family will, they won't just hear it on the Daily Drum, you'll hear it elsewhere. I also wanted to ask you, and this is, I think, a really important question, Reverend Eustace. This is specifically for you. You're a white woman. You are head of a congregation. What part has race played, if any, in trying to address some of these issues in your church community? Has gentrification been an issue? What's been your experience?
Well, my congregation is racially mixed.
Right.
My family is racially mixed. So I think that's been, I don't know, like when the people you love most are a different race than you are, it just changes how you see the world.
Yeah.
I don't know that it specifically has played a role in this. It obviously played a role in some of the more justice oriented issues towards like Black Lives Matter. It was an important thing for the congregation to do. I was actually thinking more about how what Mr. Smith also talked about, like coming together against like different congregations coming together to work on stuff. It's always been something we've talked about. It's always been a stated goal. But you're just too focused on yourself and what you're doing and trying to keep your own programs going. And I felt like it's a bit like the different crews or gangs, like I have my territory. I don't take my congregants, like those type of silly things. And I think that in some ways the weakening of the church and in the sense of it's not a social thing that people do anymore. And the people who come to church are the people who are really focused on living their faith and in our case on following Jesus. And I think we now like we're experiencing the benefits of going out and working with other people and showing that our lives are richer for doing that instead of like thinking that we were so small before, and now our picture is so much bigger. So I'm really grateful for that.
Real quick, because I'm short on time, Reverend Minister Smith, bridging the age gap, because everyone in this particular conversation, including me, is a person of a certain age. And as we know, a lot of these issues are happening with our very young people, even outside of the peace camp. Talk to me real quick about how do you bridge the age gap between those of us of a certain age in your community and those of us who are under, young adults or younger than 20.
Well, that's the biggest challenge I think that most of our congregations face, because we are aging. We are in our church. We are definitely an aging community. But what we try to do is, for example, we give scholarships to young people. So we had just a couple of rows filled in our sanctuary. We had a couple of rows filled with young people just a week ago. People graduating, going off to colleges. So I think we try to engage them in that way. We try to help them. We have our prayer walks around schools so that we can engage them. We try to engage younger parents. Mm-hmm. And we have the Washington Jazz Arts camp here at church. We also have the pedal heads. They teach young children how to bike.
That is, let me tell you, that is so important, because young people a lot of times don't know how to ride bikes. I mean, that's that's a thing. That's a parenting thing. It certainly is a rite of passage, I think, and I salute you, for that and all of those things that you were mentioning. That is certainly wonderful, because as a father, I was guilty in not getting my daughter into it until very, very late. But that's going to have to be the last word. But as I promised, this conversation, as well as the link to the Peace Camp, will be on WHUR.com after 7 o'clock tonight. And it'll be under Take Back Our Community Thursday, TBOC. Thank you all so very much for participating in this conversation. I really appreciate it. Reverend Eustace, Minister Smith, good luck to you, and God bless you. And hopefully you continue the work.
God bless you.
Thank you so much
for the work that you're doing.
That is the Daily Drum for this Thursday, July 11th. I'm Harold Fisher.